Hello everyone, Burb here. This is a way tuned up guide to Air Shakur, a collection of all my research into this character, which is releasing tomorrow for the viewing pleasure of you, and let's be honest, just my core audience and Air Shakur Oshi players. And the reason why I think that is I think this banner has been a little bit maligned because people just don't think this character's ultimate is going to work. But if you're an Oshi player for Air Shakur, I'm here to tell you your ultimate was probably going to proc more often than not. It's a lot less finicky than people are saying. I originally sort of fell into this trap because I looked at the condition. I was like, wow, that is a difficult condition to happen. But if you want a comparison, it's very similar to Inside Scoop, which on long tracks it was a relatively consistent skill due to some mechanics that I will talk about in this video. Otherwise, like I said, for the general population, there's no top meta viability on this character. However, she is a natural AN closer, which is generally just small. At the end of the day, she has a 0.355 second ultimate in the end closer position, which has access to Daring Strike, and she has a bunch of mid-race in her kit that is kind of unique to her at this point. So there is a lot of stuff you can do with this character, even though she is not, the best, 100% best character to run in the role or in the game right now because she isn't named Christmas Oguri or has a front aptitude of A. But pull for the characters that you like. That is always my suggestion in this character. Like all of them are generally viable in some way or another. So let's talk about that. Let's get right into it and talk about her aptitudes. For her aptitudes, Air Shakur is meant to be an end closer and meant for medium and long tracks. You can stretch her into mile. You're going to have a little bit of problem with the alt timing, but it should be fine. You can stretch her into pace chaser, but the only reason for that is if you are 100% confident there's going to be 6 front runners in the lobby. Otherwise, the further back you go, the faster you are, the better you are on this character because she has end closer skills in kit as well. Turf track runner, pretty difficult to put into sprints as well. Otherwise, she is relatively flexible and mainly for longer tracks in particular, so longs and mediums. For her stat bonus, she has 30% wit. And yes, you heard me right, 30% wit and nothing else, which means that I suggest you go down to 1 wit card and you start high rolling on this character. Specifically, Mr. CB makes it a little bit easier because you want Daring Strike, first of all, but the 50 specialty priority is higher than the standard Fine Mo and Nice Nature, and that makes it so that she goes to the wit tap, and basically you focus that wit tap when she's there. That 30% is going to amplify that enough to get you a relatively good amount of wit and allow you to focus on the speed and power buttons in the current Trackblazer meta. Now, when Guts build comes out, this allows you to do basically the same thing and do some wacky builds like drop a wit card in the standard Guts build for a second speed card because you have 0% speed bonus, or really, really high roll and go and try a quad Guts build that races a lot more because it doesn't have to press the Guts button as much because you're very likely to get 3 and 4 even technically every once in a while rainbows at that point. Otherwise, when we get into Grand Lab, I think we're going to find that the 3-speed 2-wit deck plus what's her name? Light Hello is going to be pretty standard when you're in that, or if you decide to run 2 wit cards because Nice Nature is 15% right now and Fine Motion is 10%, so they're not bad cards by any means, you're going to find that you hit 1200 wit almost every time, or you are going to pretty much have to completely abandon the wit button at some point, but that allows you to race more, so it's really not the end of the world. It's just technically slightly less efficient, but if you're not into high rolling, that is an incredibly comfy build, is to just go 3-speed 2-wit power card. And then run a million power sparks, try to get that up. That's going to be the issue with that particular build. Otherwise, in the future, in like 2 years, I know wit bonus is like a little tough, but right now it is quite powerful, right? Because we can't max our wit to the point where we're reaching those diminishing returns without some effort. Her unique trigger beat says when near the inner rail, mid-pack, on the final corner or later, calculate the path to victory, increasing velocity and the ability to navigate smoothly on the final straight. It's a relatively flavorful ultimate, but it does have a precondition and a condition which we will talk about. Now, is final corner just means final corner or later, which means you do have to reach that corner 4 on this particular track, I would say. Sorry, this is the next champions meeting. And then you do have to be somewhere between 4th and 7th place in the champions meeting. It is technically 40% to 75% order rate, so depending on the size of your lobby. But if you're anywhere in that mid-pack, which is a relatively wide range, you would need to also go to lane type 0, and this is what everyone is afraid of. Every single lane in the game basically has a number, and there's not technically there's technically like lane 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but they're kind of smushed down into a number between 0 and 1, and your horizontal position is what it is, and it only allows you to set it, and then when you're transferring, it's done. There's a whole lot of stuff with this, but what really matters is that lane type equals 0 means you have to literally kiss that inner rail. You have to be in the innermost rail, which seems really, really difficult to do because you've been going and looking at your backliners and have been noticing that they've been wide swinging like half the time. And even when they haven't been, they've been in like lane 2 or lane 3, like they've been in the second from the rail, the third from the rail, and that even is not lane type 0. That is lane type 0.1, or sorry, 0.2, 0.4, 0.6, 0.8, etc., etc., etc. And you need to be exactly in this inner rail, which seems really difficult to do. However, that whole thing with wide swinging actually goes and occurs after that final corner. And because if you reach the condition 4th through 7th on those tracks, you will actually go and satisfy the lane type 0 before you start wide swinging. Now, the only problem with this is that if you initiate a pass before that final corner mark and you're in the middle of the pack, you are unlikely to return into lane 0 unless there is sufficient distance between that final corner and your pass. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that a lot of times when the spurt is very, very close to that final corner, you will hit your spurt, or if you press a speed carryover, like on this mile track, you may go and do a speed carryover into this final corner, and if you notice, you will wide swing at that point because your speed is bigger, and you will grab a overtake target, and you will try to continuously pass them and be unable to finish passing them. And once you're past this final corner, you have selected your final lane, so you will not return to that lane 1. Now, if there is sufficient distance, which happens on most of the long tracks and most of the medium corner 3 tracks, you usually will be able to finish completing that pass due to your spurt hitting, something like no stopping me, something like your, I would say straightaway spurt, but that's a straight skill. How else do I want to put it? Straightaway spurt on long tracks too, stuff like that. Usually you will have enough time before the final corner to complete your pass and touch that inner rail at some point before this final corner occurs. In the next champions meeting is one of the more troublesome maps because you can see that spurt's going to hit right there. If you're in Dover position, you will be running faster, grab an overtake target, initiate a pass, and then you're on the final corner in lane 2, and you're unlikely to go back into lane 1 and touch it. If you're not actively passing, though, the natural thing that happens is you will go and touch the inner rail, and then if you start wide swinging because you choose basically a random lane, you have already satisfied the condition by the time you are going and choosing your rail. So wide swinging does not take this into account. It's all basically, are you in an active pass situation? And while I'm saying that the next champions meeting, it's very tough for Air Shakur, it can still happen. That's the weird thing, is that if there is enough space between you and the next person, you are unlikely to reach a pass, and so it can still happen. So there's no real good way to model whether this will pass or not, but because we know Inside Scoop actually works quite well on long tracks in general, I would say it's relatively consistent on longs, and the shorter medium tracks, the troublesome tracks that you're going to have are near corner 4 and corner 4 tracks. I know that was a very long description, and this is probably going to be a 20-minute guide because of that, but I thought that was probably the most important thing to say, and the thing that a lot of people are going to hear because for some reason they are just completely dismissing this character without trying to understand them. Yes, for example, the Tokyo 2400 track, the Derby, may be very tough because you probably are passing somebody if you proc any skill speed carryover, and then that's why we were seeing so many wide swings in the Tokyo 2400 meter track. But that just comes with the territory, let's be honest. If you are able to satisfy the fact that you've touched the inner rail on the final corner, as well as are in the mid-pack during that moment, you will go and proc your ultimate on the final straight itself. So, that says is final corner, but it says on final straight, it will proc. That is the condition. The precondition has to occur somewhere around here. It will delay the proc until that final straight. If you do so, it is just a 0.355 second ultimate with some lane movement speed. So it is a standard ultimate with a slight bit of movement speed upside. This is, of course, a 78% of a tri-pulse. I have it in ordered the wrong direction. So yes, there we go. It's I have the I just lost the slide. Okay, it's 78% of a tri-pulse because it's 0.45 instead of 0.35. The lane movement speed actually does a little bit. If there's somebody if you're on the inner rail or you're close to the inner rail and you have a literal wall in lane 0 or 1, you will, if you see basically the line to go as well as all the targets you're trying to overtake, you will go and you will see Air Shakur, because we know this with Digiton happens as well, just basically just zoom out and then zoom back in, and kind of like a dodging danger prudent positioning proc that you've seen. There's no way to model this, but basically it's very difficult to get blocked on that final straight as long as your vision is good enough to see it, and honestly is not 50 meters, because as your cone gets longer, it gets less wide as well. So with standard distance, you probably would not get blocked if you're on the inner rail with this ultimate. Okay, that's kind of what that's trying to help you with that lane movement speed. The inherit gets shredded because it's technically a hybrid ult, and it's a 0.35, so it's only 0.15, so it's only 60% of a tri-pulse instead of that 77%. However, we still go and inherit Digiton ult. It's just that this condition's a little more finicky than just passing to people. So, and it doesn't have the added benefit that Digiton ult has of canceling a wide swing. So that's kind of Digiton's advantage, is that on that final corner, if you are wide swinging, well, that will cancel it. This time we do not get that effect as well. So it's just a standard ultimate that you probably will not pick up due to how expensive it is normally, because it's a 200 point inherit. Her career and event, she has a easier long career, I would say. Technically, she does have to place 5th or better in the Tenno show, which is easier than pretty much all the other Tenno show spring characters that we have. 5th or better, usually you can get away with a little bit less stamina in order to get there. Even if you stam out, you probably will be in top 5. And then 3rd in the Kukuka show. This is probably the limiting factor that makes it even difficult on certain mile tracks, but in general, you should be fine outside of Track Blazer. It's a New Day, just says, hey, let's win the Autumn Triple Crown, and you have to add the Japan Cup Senior in that. In order to go and you grab Fall Runner for free at that with a little bit of speed and power, it's just one extra race, and win your career events, it's pretty easy to attain. Otherwise, she has a story-based debuff. I've been told by people that Game Tora has this wrong. You do not obtain this at the Japan Cup Classic. What you do is you cure this at the Japan Cup Classic if you win. So, from what I've been told, this could be wrong. Sure, someone in the comments is an Air Shakur player that knows this better than me, is that early on in the career you have an event that gives you 99 problems. I believe it's at the debut, that you have to live with this, and if you win the Japan Cup, which is just to participate, you get it to clear. Otherwise, you can't clear it, and you have to spend 50 points if you do not want that debuff. It is a guts and wit debuff, so you probably want to clear it. However, it also technically counts as groundwork. So front Shakur players, I know someone's going to do it. There you go. That is a free groundwork trigger because you have a early race skill that procs at time equals 0. Yeah, don't do that. But that is what I've been told. Those are her 2 secret events. Now, her events and skills, you do get Eager as a choice event, and Intense Gaze is a choice event. They're 2 perfectly fine. Eager is one of her gold skills eventually, and Intense Gaze is just a good debuff skill that kind of basically functions as a pseudo white skill for end closers, given that they can go and view the front runners in the final straight there, or in the late race rather. Otherwise, she is a charming character, which is the second best of the 4 different options that we have, only behind Fast Learner double event, but charming is quite powerful in just giving you some bond. Her innate skills are ramp up, as well as the level 2 giving her level-headed and strategist. Now, ramp up is good, and level-headed and strategist are not. Level-headed, unfortunately, you do not want to be blocked in the early race, and getting a recovery for it is not any compensation for getting front blocked at those positions. And strategist gives you a little bit more vision, but honestly, vision doesn't really do too much in the late race. And you're positioned towards the back, and you don't really want to be positioned towards the back in the late race as well. So, both these skills probably are not really takes except for just getting rating boosts, but Ramp Up is a very good innate skill. Otherwise, you do get Gold Eager, which is elated, which is just basically fast and furious, but is medium bound instead of late surge or bound. It's a perfectly fine skill. It's a little bit expensive, but of course, if you're an Air Shakur player and you really like this character, you can throw some hitbox on it. Otherwise, her sort of quote-unquote unique so far is Moonlit Flash. This is a relatively rare skill in the future, but basically it is end closer straightaways gold. The only downside to having end closer straights instead of end closer corners is that if you PDM break with a lucky proc, you get the same benefit basically from the gold version than you do the double circle or straight or the single circle version. That is why on certain tracks like mile tracks and stuff, I was suggesting single circle straights, because a lot of times it would PDM break you or catch you in the middle of the early to mid race, and that would cause you to get the same values if you were to have the double circle as well. But it's not bad to just take the gold version, although these ones, as we saw with Kid is in Black, are usually a little more expensive. But it is a 3-second duration, not a 2.4-second duration. It is not bad by any means, but straight skills are technically a little bit worse than corner skills. For her CM viability, it's not really the track that matters too much. The next CM is fine. Like I said, it's a little finicky because it's close from the spurt to that final corner. But if you do proc it, I mean, you're far enough away from the spurt to get to max speed in order to proc it on that final straight, and that's going to be what causes you to have trouble on some mile CMs, and of course sprint CMs have sprint G, but the mile CMs that are straight tracks that have straightaway spurt, well, your ultimate's going to proc there, and basically you're going to lose at least part of it because your ult's going to proc at the same time as the straightaway spurt that you're doing to accelerate, which is a little bit tough. So mainly meant to be for long tracks and medium tracks in particular, but really just the longer mediums and the shorter longs, I find that they have the least chance really of grabbing of getting eaten by the Excel zone, of course, for the miles, but also that this corner ends up being further away from the spurt itself. So the longer the track, the easier it is for her ult to proc. Sorry about that. I worded that badly. Her affinity. Gold Chip has a 32 with her, which is very high. I would think with the way, with the way she is in anime, people don't really talk to her, but she has very high affinities with like pretty much the entirety of the end closer cast, somewhere around 25 to 30. Now, Gold Chip has high affinity with everyone, but I was very surprised to see characters like Narita Taishin and even Ayabe having in the high 20s as well. So honestly, not that bad for base affinity. Obviously, her ultimate's not the greatest to go and inherit, but it's perfectly fine to do so. So in conclusion, like I said, I try to go over every character, whether people believe they're good or not. And a lot of times I find characters like this, and like Camping Dober was the same way, where it's like people have a preconception for it that, hey, this is a completely homeless character with no real chance. And yes, every single character in this game still has a chance. And this is a great example of it, is that at first glance, this ultimate doesn't seem like it will ever proc. But when you really go and you look into it, hey, it's not the hardest condition in the world. It is finicky, but like I said, I'm a winning ticket player, so it can't really get worse than block site continue time. And so, hey, in rail 0 is easier than that. So while she may have 99 problems, it is not with her kit. It's probably mostly Agnes Tachyon. Take care, everyone. Burb out.